In January 2019, the President of the United States made a rare and extraordinary declaration. He publicly called for the removal of another country's leader. That leader was Nicolás Maduro, President of Venezuela. What followed was one of the most intense political confrontations in modern Latin American history. A conflict framed as Maduro versus Trump, but rooted in far deeper causes. To understand how this confrontation began, we must go back years before Donald Trump ever entered the White House. Relations between Venezuela and the United States had been deteriorating since the rise of Hugo Chávez in the late 1990s. Chávez rejected U.S. influence, embraced socialism, and positioned Venezuela as a symbol of resistance to American power. For Washington, Venezuela became a growing concern. For Caracas, the United States became the enemy. When Chávez died in 2013, his political project did not end. It was inherited by his chosen successor, Nicolás Maduro. Maduro assumed the presidency at a moment of growing instability. Venezuela's economy was dangerously dependent on oil. Institutions were weakening. Political divisions were deepening. Over time, Maduro consolidated power, tightening control over the courts, the military, and the media. Opposition voices were sidelined. Protests were met with force, and elections were increasingly questioned by the international community. By the mid-2000s, Venezuela entered one of the worst economic crises in modern history. Hyperinflation rendered the national currency nearly worthless. Basic goods disappeared from store shelves, hospitals ran out of medicine, millions of Venezuelans fled the country, creating the largest migration crisis in Latin America. The United States accused Maduro's government of corruption, authoritarianism, and economic mismanagement. Maduro accused the United States of sabotage and economic warfare. When Donald Trump became president in 2017, he inherited this crisis, but chose a radically different approach. Where previous administrations relied on diplomacy, Trump embraced maximum pressure. His administration imposed sweeping economic sanctions. Venezuelan assets were frozen, and most critically, Venezuela's oil industry, the backbone of its economy, was targeted. The goal was clear: force Nicolás Maduro from power. In 2018, Maduro declared victory in a presidential election. The United States and dozens of other countries rejected the results, calling the election fraudulent. This moment marked a turning point. Washington no longer viewed Maduro as a legitimate leader, but as a dictator clinging to power. In January 2019, opposition leader Juan Guaidó declared himself Venezuela's interim president. Within hours, the United States recognized him as the legitimate leader of Venezuela. Donald Trump publicly demanded that Maduro step aside. Senior U.S. officials warned that all options were on the table. The possibility of military intervention was openly discussed. The conflict was no longer abstract. It was direct, and it was personal. Maduro responded with defiance. He cut diplomatic ties with the United States. He accused Trump of imperialism and attempted regime change. Inside Venezuela, the confrontation became a political weapon. Trump was portrayed as an external aggressor. Opposition figures were framed as foreign puppets. Rather than collapsing, Maduro's government adapted. As governments clashed, ordinary Venezuelans bore the consequences. Sanctions deepened economic pain. State repression intensified. Daily survival became the central struggle. For millions, the conflict between Trump and Maduro was not ideological. It was personal. It meant hunger, migration, and uncertainty. The media framed the conflict as a duel between two strong men. Trump personalized foreign policy. Maduro personalized resistance. But this was never simply about personalities. It was about power, oil, influence, and control over a nation's future. Donald Trump did not remove Nicolás Maduro from power. Nicolás Maduro did not reform Venezuela's system. Instead, the standoff froze the crisis in place. By the time Trump left office, Maduro remained president, and Venezuela remained in crisis. The story of Maduro versus Trump is not just a political confrontation. It is a warning about how international pressure can collide with authoritarian resilience, about how power struggles are often paid for by ordinary people, and about how the future of Venezuela remains unresolved.